This is Flipping the Script podcast, the soon-to-be #1 leadership podcast for purpose-driven leaders and great guest experts who give us a unique insight into what leadership looks like behind the scenes. I'm Shalia Stafford, your host, and I'm committed to helping you lead your challenges using leadership strategies to gain new perspectives, fuel your growth, and transform the way you execute on your success. Welcome back, everyone. It's Shalia here. When this is all over, what do you want to be the most proud of? Our world is in the process of fighting a pandemic that is vastly changing the reality of our everyday lives. As we face uncertainty, fear rises and our realities become distorted. Naturally, we begin to ponder our foundation and our ability to move through a crisis, but more importantly, evolving through it. It is in difficult times like these that we turn to wise leaders who have been battle-tested throughout life to share their perspective on the situation and fuel our journey to see the light in the darkness. Today's guest expert is a powerful shining light to everyone she encounters and a beautiful soul who has uncovered what it means to flip the script on your life and consciously lead the complexities of success while authentically leading the imperfect, raw, and hilarious parts of the journey. She has been battle-tested serving our nation and has led through many challenges and wants you to know that you are more resilient and braver than you know. Alani, thank you so much for being here today. It is truly a gift, and I cannot wait to highlight and share your journey.
Oh, thank you so much, Shalia. That was so sweet of you to say it. I'm so grateful that I get to talk to you today about all things leadership, and I'm just really excited to see where the conversation goes.
Oh, me too. And for our audience, I cannot say this enough. You will be on the edge of your seat. She is a powerhouse of a story behind the story and the impact of where it leads us. And we are going to peel back the layers. But before we do, like a tradition on our show, we like to ask our guest experts a few fire away questions to get to know you a little bit better. Shall we fire away?
Let's do it.
Alrighty, perfect. So what is something that you are curious about right now?
I'm very curious about my emotions, specifically my anger. It has been surfacing, and so I'm giving it space to just be whatever it needs to be.
That's a beautiful one. What do you understand today about your life that you didn't understand just a year ago?
Oh man, that's such a good one. There's so many good lessons. I feel like rather than doing all the time, just being has been what I've mostly been learning over the last year is I do by just being who I am. Yeah, so kind of the idea of as women, we're always working on our to-do list all the time and we love marking those things off, yeah. And that's all really good, but most of the time it's not really about striving. It's about just being who you were created to be. And, that includes for me just expressing kindness and vulnerability and authenticity. And so by doing those things, I'm giving other people permission to be the same way, right? And so it's not a matter of like checking it off the to-do list, but just being who you're supposed to be also gives people permission to be who they genuinely are.
That's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for it.
Okay, so complete this thought. I wish I had paid more attention when
they taught about patience in grade school.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay,
Yeah.
so speaking of which, what is something that required your patience today?
Dealing with some technology and some software issues that I was having earlier this morning has required a lot of my patience, especially throughout the pandemic. But, it's also a great opportunity to kind of recenter myself and remember that I'm not in control of things all the time and that things do happen for a reason. And so more than being frustrated, I try to look into it as an opportunity to grow and be present and just accept circumstances as they are.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one that I have on a constant too. So I understand the struggle is real.
Yes.
So what is an experience that you're currently seeking right now to support or challenge your growth?
It's so interesting. I feel like I've had this nagging feeling for a while that there's more to life than what I have experienced in the past, which to me on the outside sounds really crazy considering everything that I've done in my career. Like I am very grateful for all of those accomplishments. But with that being said, I think there's this part of me that is wanting to shift much more into the intuitive space, kind of hand in hand with that idea of letting go of the to-do list and just flowing and moving through the world. To-do lists are amazing, but I don't think that they really get us to that place where we are being the best versions of ourselves. And so I think that's kind of where I'm at right now.
It's so funny you say that because I literally, and I'll show you, I have a little sticky tag here that says to focus on just being and less on the to-do list.
What?
Like, I kid you not,
Oh my
because
gosh.
it's something that I have too been experiencing, right? It was just with being in the pandemic and everything shifting, you just think, well, how can we feel like we're still moving forward? And naturally that layer of me that comes from the corporate world that you just got to do and just get it done starts to come out. And it comes out, and I think that because I am moving in what was familiar and comfortable for me, that I am in essence progressing, but in reality, it just ends up causing more stress and overwhelm, and it doesn't allow me to be in flow, as you said.
Yes, 100%. And it's so interesting too, because when you have that understanding, you also know that there's just this whole other part of you that can get to a whole other level, and you're
Yeah.
trying to tap into that, and
Yes.
that's how we do it, is by letting go of the control, surrendering, right, to the process, and just destroying, sometimes like burning to the ground, the structures that you've had in place for a while that served you really well, but aren't serving you anymore. And so, yeah, it's super uncomfortable, but I'm very grateful that I'm being nice enough to myself to give myself the
Mm.
space to do that. And that's something I wouldn't have done 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, so imagine that your 109-year-old self had access to a time machine. They jump into that time machine and arrive to this very moment in time. They come out, they sit next to you, and they give you advice. What would they say to you?
they would say, don't worry about what's going to happen. It's going to be crazier and wilder than you ever could have imagined, but it's going to be so much better than anything you could have ever planned. So just go with the flow, enjoy the ride, just try to find every opportunity to connect with people.
Mm.
And
If you had to break up your life up until this point into 3 chapters and give each chapter a title, what would they be?
chapter 1 would be spam and rice.
Spam and rice.
um, so it was my favorite meal growing up, and it was one of the first ways I could explain how much I love someone. So my dad was in the military. He was gone for like a year at one point, and we had letters because, we didn't have email back then. And I remember to this day, like, I'm at the desk trying to tell my dad how much I love him. And I said, Dad, I love you more than spam. And when he got back, he was like, I could feel the love because I know how much you love spam. So, um, so yeah, I think that was the first time that I really kind of tried to express myself emotionally in that way. Chapter 2 would be fun size bodyguard. And I think just because that characterizes the craziness of my career, and kind of the duality of my journey. And then chapter 3 would be famine, rice, and joy, we'll call it.
Ooh.
So being in this new season of really kind of letting go of what the world tells me I should be, and embracing all of the passions and goals that I have within me. Lulu, who's my dog, is one of those. And she, it turns out, also loves spam and rice. It's her favorite dish. And so, just kind of seeing things come
Yeah.
more full circle, and the fact that I'm in a place where I can really experience the joy of that connection, whether it's with a person or with a dog, I'm just very grateful for.
Isn't it interesting how that inner joy that came out in our early parts of our life during our childhood, where we're less inhibited by what the world thinks we should be and what we think we want to be, and all these influences around these personas that we try to fit, we go back to that place later on in our life.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it's so funny because so here in Hawaii, the spam and rice dish I'm referring to is called musubi. So if anybody who's been to Hawaii knows you can buy these in 7-Eleven, any gas station. It's just a little block of rice with a little piece of spam, and it's got some teriyaki sauce and wrapped in a little bit of seaweed. And yeah, just seeing the love that she feels eating it and the joy that I get
Mhm.
to experience connecting that love with her. And, it's processed meat. A lot of people really judge it, but for me, it does represent a lot of love and connection and
Yeah.
affection. And yeah,
Mhm.
I do want to connect with that young kid inside of me.
Yes.
It was so much more pure back then, right? No to-do lists back then, just enjoy and love and live your life.
At the core of our joy. I love that. Okay, so Alani, just to kind of give our audience a little bit of background on how our paths cross, we came together because of a mutual interest that we had in the Choose FI strategy, right? Which is a collective movement of people who are being strategic with their lives to reach financial independence before the traditional age of 65. And I've learned from speaking to others on this journey that really what this path is allowing us to do is to fulfill our core values by giving us the option to pursue life on our terms. And it's something that for me personally, I didn't learn until later on in my career, but when I did, it really helped me fulfill that journey to the ultimate of where I wanted to be and how I would be. And it comes with its own sacrifices too. But nonetheless, it was an intersection of our values coming together through a strategy.
Yeah.
And you are 20 years into this dream that you had in your heart to make an impact in this world through the discovered values that you discovered early on in life and have stayed with you. And also understanding this crazy journey that is very much like Pinterest versus reality, right? Of how the path unfolds for us and really getting there. And it's not easy. Can you take us back to that ambition that you had to take on this world in those early stages of your career, and how did you define success then, and how has that evolved now?
Yeah, definitely. So, gosh, your questions are totally taking me back to when I was a kid. It's funny because, you hear about musical prodigies, for example, right? Like their parents will tell you that they were listening to records for 8 hours a day when they were, 1 year old or 2 years old or whatever it may be. And the other day, I remembered a memory where I think I was 5, and we were living in Panama at the time, and we had a group project at school, and our group leader was not meeting her minimum requirements. And I literally was so frustrated that I wrote a note to her about leadership. And I was like, this is what leadership is. And I like walked it down to her house, and I knocked on the door. I gave it to her mom, and somehow my mom came back into possession with this thing and still has it. But yeah, for me, like leadership has just always been in my blood. I've always been fascinated at the idea of, are leaders born or are they grown? And growing up, my dad being in the military, I always really admired the folks that voluntarily said, I'm willing to die for this country and for the beliefs that we stand for. That was really incredible to me. And I wanted to be a part of that ever since I can remember. Um, and then in high school, my dad ended up getting stationed at the embassy in Colombia in South America. And this was at the height of Pablo Escobar, drug days. And it was a really dangerous place to be at the time. Living in Colombia, the culture was so beautiful, and it was devastating to see the impact that a drug could have on an entire culture. And at that moment was when I was like, this is what I want to focus on. I want to do anti-drug work. I want to make sure that this doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. And I started my journey, like all of my studies were focused on getting back to Latin America. So I double majored in Latin American studies and criminal justice. I had a minor in military studies. I already speak Spanish, so that was a plus. I ended up joining the military thinking I was going to do counter drug work. So I commissioned as an officer, and then that's kind of where the craziness started happening and things were really kind of out of my control. So I ended up becoming a special agent in the military. So most people know NCIS. The Air Force has a version of that called the Office of Special Investigations. And so, starting right out the gate, I was working drug cases, counterintelligence cases. We were chasing spies in northern Japan. I worked my first child predator case there. I deployed to Iraq from there, where I did human intelligence for special operations. So we were targeting high-value Al-Qaeda leaders. From there, I came back to Japan just in time for the tsunami and the earthquake, which was also super crazy. Shortly after that, I moved to Quantico, which is where our headquarters is. And there I was in charge of all of our counterintelligence cases for technology protection. So all that means is just making sure terrorists and spies don't steal our technology. And then from there, I was selected to go to command in Kuwait. So I did a year in Kuwait where I was the commander of our units that handle counterintelligence, counterterrorism, felony level crimes, fraud, that kind of stuff. And then from there, I was picked to be the personal security advisor to the Secretary of the Air Force, which all that means is I was the bodyguard, which in and of itself might be a semi-normal career path for some military folk, except that I'm 5'3" and very petite and look really young for my age and brown skin, right? And so it was just super crazy because even my own perceptions in the beginning, I felt like they had the wrong person. I did not feel 100%. I had the worst case of imposter syndrome ever. Every single assignment they would select me for, promote me to, I was like, there's no way. Why are, going to the Middle East, going to Asia, they're some of the most misogynistic, anti-youth, anti-brown skin, right? Countries. And I'm like, isn't there some big white guy you'd rather send? But I'm so grateful that I had bosses, and actually they were almost all of them were men who supported me and who would tell me, they're like, no, you're the right person. We know that you're going to do well on this job and you just need to go get it done. And so I did it mostly scared most of the time. And I think that's part of it's the central theme of my mission now, which is helping people to understand that it doesn't matter if they think they're qualified or not. They've been built with all of the tools and skills that they need to do the job well already. It's just a matter of having confidence and belief in what you know and believing that you're going to pick up the rest along the way. And so yeah, that's kind of...
That is mind-blowing. Okay. For one, and this all started from an idea that you had about what was important to you as a child. And was it 5? Did you say
Yep.
you were 5 and
Yes.
realizing and having this realization of the world and the injustice in it and how you felt at 5? At 5, a 5-year-old gave you the strength to take on and
Yes.
make the impact that you did and are making still today in the lives of so many people around you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Yeah, it's so true. And it's funny because that desire that I had about anti-drug work, I remember it so strongly because it was so clear. But now that I've worked all of those different types of mission sets, what I realized was my real passion was in protecting kids and vulnerable populations. And so I ended up leaving active duty and I went to the world's largest anti-slavery organization where I was in charge of child sex trafficking and child sex abuse cases in Latin America. So funny that things came a little full circle in that way. And then I've since moved to Hawaii and am the architect of the state's largest anti-child exploitation operation. So, if you remember To Catch a Predator, that TV show, it's kind of like that, where we have anywhere from 50 to 100 law enforcement officers, intelligence analysts sitting together in a room, and we're just doing a whole bunch of arrests of pedophiles and whatnot. And so, I think that's one of the core lessons that I teach people on this journey of understanding who they are is you don't know what you don't know. And so you just have to try, right? So action brings clarity is one of the key tenets that we teach through my coaching program. Which, oh, by the way, I also ended up becoming a life coach as a result, just because I don't want anybody to ever experience the imposter syndrome that I felt for
Yeah.
so long, because it was such a waste of energy. And so action brings clarity. And I tried the anti-drug thing. Turns out it wasn't really my jam. I have a lot of respect for it. But now I'm in this space where I get to protect kids, and I just can't imagine anything better than that.
Oh my goodness. So much that I want to go into here. And it's this, you had this ability to pivot from your career and still have that foundational value being served, which is the value of justice and making sure that the most vulnerable are protected. But I can't imagine what that journey's been like for you, because and you and I were talking about this before. So many times we read the resume and the accolades of people, and we automatically think it's just one straight linear journey, and that everyone who has similar accolades are part of where you are. And here's the thing, and what I want people listening to know about you is that you are part of a very rare collective group of leaders worth following who do have all the accolades and the titles, but also the character behind it. Because in a world today, we have so many people who do have the accolades and the title, but talent doesn't equal character. We put them on pedestals for who they are, but in the reality and behind the scenes, they're not living to core values that help make an impact, not just for themselves, but for the people all around them, right? So it's hard to know the difference, and it's easy to get confused in the middle too. Have you
Right.
ever experienced that in your journey?
Oh my gosh, yes. So, coming into the military, it's a male dominated world, right? And so I just had this perception that I had to act like them. And so there were three main things that I learned very early on earned me respect within the unit. And it was being able to keep up on long runs, so not fall out of group runs, cussing a lot, and drinking as much as the boys could drink, which at the time served me. But looking back, it was so much work to do all of those things because it wasn't me,
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm known to drop an F-bomb here and there, but still,
And we like our wine.
yes, we do love our wine, yes. But I was trying to fit the mold that they told me I was supposed to fit, rather than just leading from a place of authenticity. And so, I think to your point, right? My central message is your weaknesses are actually the core of your strengths if you let them be. So, for example, and I think to your point, me worrying about my appearance, right? Like, I'm not going to look like the bodyguard. People aren't going to listen to me. They're not going to respect me. I remember one time I was checking into a commander's conference, and I was in line, and they checked in the male commanders in front of me. And then I get to the front of the line, and they're like, "And which commander are you checking in for?" And I was like, "Myself. I am Major so-and-so." And the look on their face, right? But what I've learned about that is that speaks more about them and their perceptions than it does about me, right? So there's a small part of me that hopes, like, maybe through this interaction, like, I'm not going to judge you for it, but maybe you're going to remember next time not to judge someone based on how they look. The other thing too is it is a really easy discriminator for me to use to check that character right out the gate, right? So
Very true.
so my team of bodyguards that I had, they would often laugh about it because we always have guys do advance, is what it's called. So they're at the site early on, making sure we have control over the physical area and they've touched base with the right people. And I would show up with my protectee, and someone on site, not from the security team, would go to my guy and start talking to him while I'm standing right next to him as if he's the boss. And they would always be like, "Sorry, like, this is the agent that's actually in charge." And the look on people's faces, it never ceased to amaze me. But with that being said, the people whose character came out where they only valued certain physical appearances and certain types of people, I knew, okay, I'm not going to use my precious energy trying to build a relationship with this person, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
focus on the people instead who treat everybody with dignity and respect, which is a key value of mine as well. And so, even though in the short term it was a little bit of an ego hit, right?
Yeah.
At the
Yeah.
end of the day, it just saved me so much time and energy. But I think that's just a really good example of that thing you think is your weakness actually isn't. Like, you can leverage it in ways that make your ability to do what you do more efficient and better and more joyful.
Yeah, yeah. I can see that, and I love how you said the weaknesses that we have are the core of our strengths. And really sometimes I even wonder is do we have to sometimes experience or is it even a requirement to be inauthentic to find our authenticity, right? Because as we're figuring out who we are experimenting with different things that we have to deal with, different situations, different people, different responses from ourselves. So do we really know how we're going to respond to, like where you were saying, having to run with the guys and having to keep up with the cussing and the drinking? You were experimenting with this is the group of people that I am working with. This is a group of people that I'm part of a team and we're accomplishing a mission and you were doing that. But as you experience that experience, you get to then decide, well, what do I really like about it? And you like the fact that you guys were a team and they were good people, but it wasn't authentic to who you were and how you wanted to move forward.
Right.
And then you get the choice to take that data and do something with it. But without doing that, you wouldn't have the data to really understand it because the things that we value really have to be pressure tested. And sometimes it's through a challenge that feels inauthentic to who we are. And then other times it's a carrot that's being dangled in front of us. That's
Right.
like, hey, you should take this opportunity here. But even though you know it's going to go against everything you want and believe in,
Right.
it'll pay a lot. It'll do a lot for you. It'll get you a lot of attention.
Yes, and I am so grateful for that time where I was forged in fire because it
Mm,
did teach me a lot about my character and what is important to me. And that is one thing I see a lot of in people in general, right? Is a lot of the fear and confusion that people have is a result of not fully understanding how they were built. What are
mm,
people's actual values? Right. And so you go back to what you were saying earlier about the Choose FI community. What's beautiful, what I love about this community is that
mm,
idea of you get to ditch what the world tells you, right? Like, oh, you
yep,
can't retire until you're 60, whatever. Like, who said that? Right. That's a rule we put on ourselves. And on top of that, what are the different financial levers that you can pull that feel good to you to help you achieve those financial goals that you have, right? So whether it's real estate, investments,
side hustles.
side hustles, right? Like extreme frugality, right? All of
Yeah,
those things. Um, for example, real estate is something we're talking about, but I'm actually not that comfortable with the idea, and
yeah.
so, but other people are. And I love that you can pick and choose what works for you, just like in life. If you know your values and know what space you're comfortable in, or, what space you're willing to kind of like push to be in, you can create a life that is so authentic. You can pull the levers that you want to be successful. And similarly in life, once you identify what your core values are, which most people don't actually know what their
It's
core values
hard.
are,
Isn't it
right?
hard? Yeah.
Right, right. And so you have to go through some process and it's different for everybody, right? That's part of why I have a coaching
Yeah.
practice is to coach people through, okay, what is important to you, And when they realize like I don't even really know, right? Like then as they start clarifying their value system, they start seeing very clearly, oh, the struggle I'm having now is that my value of family is coming into conflict with my value of career
Um,
progression, right?
yeah.
And so I get to decide which one is higher on the list and, how am I going to frame this so that I can live the life that I really want? It doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean it's happy all the time, but you're willing to step out and take some risks and continue working through the process so that you do know who you are. And that way, when you come to those ambiguous places in life, you know what you're going to do because you know who you are.
Absolutely. And I love how you said that because while we may not know from the start what our values are. We may ponder, do we even think we know them or should I know them? What we do know is when something doesn't feel right on the path that we're on.
Yes, exactly. And it all starts in your body. And so we
Yep.
have what we call the think, feel, act model in coaching. So the idea that what you're feeling inside of you is created by a thought that you have. And so the thought creates the feeling, which creates the behavior that you end up displaying. The problem is that most of our thoughts are subconscious and have been running
Yep.
through our heads for decades in some cases. And it isn't until you bring those to the forefront, bring those thoughts to life, that you can decide, is this thought serving me or is it not serving me? So,
Mm. And that's the beauty. While we can't guarantee many things in life, what we can guarantee is that you're going to experience challenges along the path. So how do we optimize those challenges to make it count and create a or even unlearning what we've learned, right? Which is partly half of it.
yes.
It's really defining what do we know about these major milestones or these major definitions of life, right? Like success and what you thought success meant when you first started your career versus
Yes.
what you now know has evolved based through the experiences and the challenges that you've had and how you've had to redefine, unlearn, and then go back out there and experiment with it, get the data, and then continue that process
Yes.
over a lifetime.
Yes, absolutely. And that points again back to the Choose FI community, right? This idea of like, we don't want to be on the hamster wheel where we're working to live.
Yeah.
We want to live our lives in a way where, we have our four walls and our roof and our, food on the table, but we also want to live from a place of joy. Really, people
Yeah.
want more freedom, right? And so society tells us that our value partly hinges on how much money we make a year.
Yep.
And it does for some people, right? But when you're really clear about your values and what's important to you, leaving that super toxic 6 or 7 figure job for like a nonprofit job that is barely making you any money, but like your joy skyrocketing, is absolutely a logical leap for you when you know exactly who you
Yeah.
are. And so, that's where Choose FI is such a great community, because the tools and the tricks and the trial and error that other people have experienced, we get to learn from those, right? And
Yeah.
deciding what works for us. And so, for example, in my own life coaching, oh my gosh, when somebody suggested I be a life coach, I literally snorted, because I was like, is that even a real thing? Like, who does that? Right? Like, there was this intense feeling of judgment around the
Yeah.
idea of a life coach, because I'm a military chick. We're taught to be self-reliant. We don't need help from people. Life coaching is frou-frou. But the more I looked into it, the more I was like, no, this is totally my jam. And this is what I was built to do. And I did leave my 6 figure job to do this and to work in nonprofit work. And
Yeah.
I have this really kind of funky hybrid. So I'm still a part-time law enforcement officer. I actually started volunteering with a state agency working internet child sex abuse cases. And it was so crazy, because prior to starting this financial independence journey, I never really would have thought to try to dictate life on my own terms, right?
Yeah.
Because you're taught, at least when we were young, it was like, you go with a company, you work for 20 years, you get your pension, like that's your life. And so I started volunteering because I just had this like tapping on the shoulder, right? Of like, okay, life coaching is amazing, but you still have this justice skill set that you love
Yeah.
using. And I started volunteering just a couple days a week at the Internet Crimes Against Children unit. And then my boss at the time was like, well, do you want to get paid? Like, we have a position if you want it. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, I was like, I'll only do it if I get to pick my days and my hours, and I can work as little or as much as I want. And I did not think he was going to say yes, but he was like, yeah, sounds good. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like, but again, it's having that flexibility and the courage and the imagination to say, I love this world, but working child sex abuse cases takes a toll on the soul over time. And so having this balance of like these incredible highs with coaching, with the lows of being in the slimy pit of
Mhm.
humanity, it
Yeah.
balanced things out for me, and I'm able to have more longevity, right? And so having
Yeah.
that financial independence and what we call FU money in the Choose
Oh,
FI
yes.
world, FU money is amazing because, yeah, as soon as something isn't serving me anymore, then I'm not doing it anymore. But it, as you say, required some sacrifice. So, not just some, a lot of sacrifice. So, I did multiple years in the desert where I was getting tax free money. And I tried to be smart about how I invested that money. Right. And so, it sucks spending Christmases and birthdays away from family. I missed my sister's college graduation. Like, I missed some major milestones in my family's lives. And, that afforded me the ability now to be able to pick and choose what projects do I want to work on because I'm passionate about them and because I think doing this is going to help the world be a slightly better place at the end of the day.
What I love about your story so much, Alani, there's so many things, but the main thing is just how you are such an example of what that organic and raw path really looks like to get from where we start to evolving in a conscious manner. And it's still a work in progress for all of us. It won't end until our last day here. But the beauty about it is that you show the truth of the human complexity that comes with it, right? Because we are taught to think that once we reach that ultimate six figure or the title or we climb the ranks, that's it. We should be happy, continue moving along in this direction. And if you're lucky on the weekends, have some fun and then dread Monday. Right.
Yes.
And work for the next 47 years of your life for someone else, or for someone, however you like, or for yourself. But 47 years of work if you only go down a one traditional path. And the reality is that so many times where we fail a lot of our professionals out there, just a lot of our humans, just forget the idea of professionals that are trying to figure it out in the world, is that we romanticize the idea of leadership. That you should just do it, that you should just be yourself, but who is the self we're being?
Yes.
And what happens when we try to be ourself, but we don't even know the self? What do we do there?
Right.
Oh, just
Right.
do it. That's just it. And the reality is you do have these human emotions that come with being a human. And you
Yes.
will have moments of silence in your life. You'll have moments of failure. You'll have moments of ups and downs. But what do we do in those in between moments of life? Because we don't give enough strategy there to what that really looks like. And when people like you come out and share with the world what that journey has looked like and how both your successes and your challenges have served your ability to serve so many people in this world today, that is what we all strive for. But it's a long journey.
Yes. It is such a long journey. And you bring up so many amazing points. Raw is definitely how I've been feeling over the last few years. And I think it's because people do need to see that progress is not linear. And there really aren't a lot of examples out there of people who are willing to really put all of themselves out there and be like, this is who I am. This is what I tried. This is what I messed up. Right. Um, and even in my coaching journey, so part of my core foundation is my faith. Like, it
Yeah.
dictates so much of what I do. And I just try to live day to day with a belief of like, I need to love God and I need to love my neighbor. Right.
Yeah.
And, the interesting thing with that though is on the legalistic side, there's all these rules, right? So we talked about to-do lists, like you can't lie, you can't cheat, you can't steal, you can't have premarital sex, you can't do all these things, right? And so even though it's really scary, being able to share that rawness with people of like, I can love my God and follow my faith, but still be a girl who drops F-bombs at appropriate
Yes.
times. Because,
Yes.
when I think about that Teddy Roosevelt quote, right? The man in the arena quote that
Yes.
Brene
I
Brown
love
loves. Isn't
that.
it such a great quote? But yeah, all of the most badass warriors I've ever met in my life across all walks of life, they've all cussed. And
Mhm.
I personally think that's attributed to the idea of I'm in the arena getting my ass kicked every day. And it's hard, but
Yes.
I'm doing what I do from a place of wholeheartedness and love, and I'm trying to do my best, and I recognize that I'm not a perfect person, and I'll admit when I'm wrong, but I'm still doing the best I can. And that means that sometimes I'm going to cuss, even though I love me some Jesus, right? And you can judge me
Yeah.
for that if you
Yeah.
want, but the fact is people want to see that honesty, right? Rather than just being like, oh, I go to church on Sunday and I read my Bible and like I never sin, which is not true, right? Like we all
Exactly.
sin.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's, you're going back to that mold too that you spoke about earlier on. It words are just words at the end of the day, but what we do and how we respond to people and the impact that we create and how we engage our actions, that's it.
Yes.
Right. And the way that you are able to treat and connect with so many people and treat so many people and do for so many people, that is the core of your faith. That is an example of faith, not the expression of what we are trying to to get across.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. And I mean, there are tons of examples in the Bible that are riddled with how weaknesses were leveraged to project strength, right? Like that is like the core message of the Bible is the weakest are elevated because they are humble, because they are pure of heart, because they're not perfect, but they're striving to do the best that they can in this world. And that's what the world needs more of, right? Is hope and just honesty and not having that face on that shows like I'm a perfect person, because there is no such thing. And actually, that's another thing that you kind of touched on earlier is this idea of, I don't know why the world tells us we need to be happy all the time. But the truth is that life isn't happy all the time. And, there are times you're going to be scared. There are times you're going to be sad. You're going to be frustrated. And part of life is recognizing what that is and sitting with it, but still taking one step forward towards the goal that you have, right? So in spite of those emotions, still putting your big girl pants on and getting to work. Because yeah, like there's nobody who jumps in with both feet into the fire, like super stoked. Like everybody's a little bit scared to do that, but it's how willing are you to do the things scared?
Mhm. And what's the story that's driving the inaction?
Mm-hmm.
How did you learn to define what it's gonna mean about you, about life, and how others will perceive you?
Yes. Oh gosh, that is so true. And your level of caring, right?
Yeah.
On how people view how you live your life. Because when you're being authentic, of course, you're going to be met with adversity and people aren't going to like you and whatnot, but that's why you need your crew, right?
Yep.
Those amazing people who, even at your worst, still support you and still love on you. Community, it's not just about your actual family or your coworkers. It's really about deciding who your family is going to be. And that
Oh,
family can be outside of the nuclear family, right? There's so many
yeah.
people who grew up without parents or without siblings or without that kind of familial network. But
Yes.
the beauty of life is that you can break outside of that box that says, this is what an appropriate support network looks like. And you get to pick the family that you allow into your life. And there's this quote that I love, which is, you're the average of the people you spend time with. And it's so funny because when I look at who my support network is, I'm just so blown away that I get to hang in the company of
Yeah.
such amazing lady badasses, all of them. They sharpen me and they push me to be better, and I push them to be better. And yeah, I'm just very grateful to have them in my life.
I love that, and it's so vital to have a community because we know that there will come a point where the world will judge us, where we will feel judged, and where our perceptions of that judgment will slow us down a bit.
Yes.
And we need people to be there to help us see what we can't see in that moment because
Yes.
you will 100% have it.
Yes.
And what you were saying earlier about the need to always feel like we have to be happy. And I think that it's important to also remember that there's always going to be a pain or a sacrifice in whatever choice we choose. If we choose to live life on our terms, there's a sacrifice that comes with that. If we choose to put off chores, and I tell my kids this all the time, not do the laundry, then I'll have the pain of doing it all at one time or the pain of doing it now. You have to choose the pain that will serve that energy and that space and that momentum that you want. And sometimes you have to choose the pain of not doing it, but then being at peace with what the meaning around that means.
Right. Absolutely. And everybody's threshold for pain is different.
Yes.
Right. So I'm built differently than you are built, and
Yeah.
we're both built beautifully. But for example, one of the questions I get a lot from people when they hear about my career path is they're like, oh my gosh, you deployed? Like, wasn't it scary? Like, weren't you afraid you were going to die? And I mean, it was like weekly, if not almost daily, when you're down there that you're getting shot at or you're getting bombed. And I distinctly remember one day, because we were working around the clock. And I finally was able to get into the gym one day, and I was running on the treadmill, and it started raining down bombs. And normally you're supposed to shelter in place, right? So you get under like a hardened structure, something like that. But this day I was like, no, I'm not getting off this treadmill. Like, I need to work out. I need this for my mental sanity. And if I'm going to die today, then so be it, but I'm not getting off this treadmill. And that's wild to a lot of people because for them, it's like imminent threat to my physical being, right? But for me, the way I was
Yeah.
built, I know that I'm trained, literally trained in how to take calculated risk.
Yeah.
And in that moment, for me, I was like, I just know, based on my faith, my time is up when it's up, and I don't have control over that. And I'm not reckless with my life. But in that moment, it was more important for me to get that mental clarity through physical exercise, which was so desperately needed considering how much we were working. And that's different for someone else, right?
Yeah.
So that type of courage that I have might be different for someone who's staying at home with kids right now in the middle of the pandemic. And the courageous act for them is to say, I need some time alone to get out of the
Mhm.
house away from the kids because I need mental sanity, right? Like
Yep.
different types of courage, but still the same level is required. And it's just based on who we are and how we're built to move through the world. So,
And also the things that we have to power. So you doing that requires the ability to power the mission that you served at the time. You needed that mental clarity, and you knew it was so important that in order to be successful in what you had to execute, this part had to be served. And for the parents who are courageous enough to say, I need time, and to take their time, they know that time will allow them to be whole and come back to the children that they want to
yes.
serve in a healthy manner.
Yes. Exactly.
And that's the knowing what that is, and that will evolve and it'll change, right?
Right. Right.
So we will all experience anytime when we are evolving, we will feel tension and doubt and uncertainty. And this can be around a career shift, it can be marriage, parenting happening. It can simply be you're tired of the job that you're at, or you want to pursue something you've always wanted to do and you're fearful. But when those moments happen, it will always come with fear, doubt, and uncertainty. And
Yes.
we get to choose whether we revert back to the familiar or the comfortable, or whether we choose to evolve from it. And we go
Right.
into these new experiences that are going to feel uncomfortable, awkward. They're not going to give us the results that we want in the beginning, but we stick to the process because we're so sure of now what we are serving.
Yes. No, absolutely. And I think that's part of the reason why I kind of exist in this space right now is to kind of show people if you
Yeah.
can be a 5'3" fun size senior bodyguard for one of the most powerful people at the Pentagon, you can literally do anything.
You give me
Right.
hope. I'm
You
5'2", and I'm like, I've never heard of anyone my size, doing such a big thing in the world.
Yeah.
And then 2, also, you mentioned you struggled a lot with always looking younger, and so we are
Mhm.
judged by that, especially when you're in high title positions.
Yes, no, absolutely. But once again, that thing I thought was a weakness was a strength because as a bodyguard, as a security advisor, I'll never forget. I was in it's advanced, basically bodyguard training. So I went through a couple courses, and the first day of class, we're doing introductions, and literally every other person in that room is a guy. But my position was the most senior position out of everybody's, and I feel the imposter syndrome come back like full force, right? And
Mm.
I'm like, 11 years in at this point, like I should be over this, but I'm not. Right. And so one day on break, I'm talking to one of the instructors and I like get vulnerable for a second, which is especially scary in the military and law enforcement spaces. But I was like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to do this? I'm a chick. Like, I feel like they got the wrong person. Right. And he took a long drag off of his cigarette and was like, you have the advantage over every guy in this room because nobody suspects you're the bodyguard. Right. So there were many documented instances where unstable folks, or maybe just like super macho guys, would see the big, bulky guy with the earpiece in and know their job. And they would pick a fight with them because they wanted to test their strength or, whatever craziness was happening at the moment, which in and of itself isn't awful, but it's a threat to the protectee because you don't know if that person's just trying to mess with you or if they're trying to mess with a protectee, right? And so I had the element of surprise in my favor. And so, right. So, because they never suspected I was going to be the bodyguard. So if they ever tried anything, protecting my protectee never looks pretty. It doesn't have to look pretty. The point is for me to get them away from the threat as quickly as possible. Right. And so my team, we never had any incidents like that because, of course I'm not God. I can't tell for sure why that was, but I just know that nobody ever challenged my authority because they didn't know who I really was. But, and so again, also about bodyguarding, it's not about your physical strength. It's about how you use your brain. So personal security is all about controlling your physical environment, controlling who comes in and out, controlling exit points, entry points, controlling security background checks on folks that are going to be there. There's so much prep and work that goes into these, like you would be amazed. But the reason for that is so we can control the environment just in case there is a threat.
Yeah.
And so, leaving that job now, I'm like, oh, that's cake. I got that because I know that I just have to be really good at doing my site surveys and being very thorough and making sure that I'm making contact with the right people and feeling really good about the situation, but also listening to my intuition. So when that spidey sense goes off saying something's off here, even though you can't see what's happening, I have to listen to that well-honed intuition and just do what it tells me to do, even if I have to apologize later on. The point is, my mission is I have to keep this person safe and I'm not going to apologize for how I do it. Right.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I'm curious, thinking back, I'm thinking of you running on that treadmill and doing your workout and the threat of imminent danger nearby. It makes me think as someone, and I'm sure a lot of people are thinking they're in awe and amazement of your power and your strength and just your dedication to what you do. What is your biggest fear?
Oh, my biggest fear, and we in the coaching world call this a gremlin, right? So there's a voice that's kind of running through your head and it's saying the same thing on repeat and it's an I statement. So it's usually something like, I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm not qualified, right? Like there's something that's holding you back from being successful that you can't control.
Yeah.
My voice tells me that I don't matter.
Hmm.
So the idea that no matter what I do, I can't make an impact and make the world a slightly better place than it was yesterday, that is my biggest fear. And being able to recognize when that lie is on loudspeaker in my head and recognizing that it's not part of me is still a daily exercise that I have to practice. And interestingly enough, it comes back to a time in college when I was in ROTC and there was this colonel who one day, he did not like me. And he flat out was like, you're never going to commission, you're never going to graduate, you're never going to amount to anything, is what he told me. And that was right before I started my senior year of college. And I had such a fire in me after that. Like, I was like, I'm going to show you that you're wrong. And it served me well. I graduated with 2 bachelor's degrees. I commissioned, right? But what I realized 15 years later is that voice was still with me, telling me I wasn't going to amount to anything. And I'd spent a lot of my career trying to prove to myself that I would.
Yeah.
And I achieved a lot through it. But what I was realizing too was I had a whole other level inside of me that I knew needed to come out, but I didn't know how to get it out. And I realized it was because everything I had done to a certain degree was done from a place of anger, right? I wanted to
Mhm.
prove that voice wrong and I was angry about it. And so I like willed it to happen.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of good things through that, except that I wasn't built to do things from a place of anger. I was built to do them from a place of joy and a place of freedom. And because I love the people that I serve. And it's in letting go of the anger and receiving who I truly am and how I'm truly meant to operate. That's how I was able to achieve this whole other level where I don't worry about what other people think anymore,
Yeah.
And so, as painful as those journeys were, I'm so grateful that I had them because it's like you say, our journey, it never ends until we take our last breath. And it's not linear and it's not always happy, but it's about still feeling joy in the midst of the storm, knowing that, hey, I've been through worse. Right. That's a common
Yeah.
technique we use in coaching is when people are in the midst of the craziness, that's one of the techniques we use is take us back to a time when you experienced something similar. What happened?
Mm.
And the answer is always, yeah, it was tough, but the outcome was so much better than I could have imagined. And so it's kind of that reminder to trust
Yes.
the process because you've been there before. You not only survived, but you thrived and you learned and you got clarity around who you were. And so it's going to happen again. Just keep going, right?
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you say that during a moment of challenge, we tend to forget every great thing that we've been able to accomplish and overcome. And it's in those moments, which is why also your community serves such a great deal to that, that we need people in our court that can help remind us because we will forget. It all goes out the window. Either it's our community or we have people that we form accountability groups with. We have life coaches just like you, that we need people in our corner who can remind us and who can help us thrive during those moments.
Absolutely. And to your point, and I just want to clarify this because I feel like this is something a lot of people know, but on a conscious level, they don't really get. So when you're in that place of like, I just want to Netflix and feel sorry for myself on the couch, it might feel really gunky and yucky, but it's because your body's trying to tell you something, right? Like you're depleted, you need to recharge. There is an advantage to every emotion, even sadness, even anger. They're always trying to tell you something about yourself that you're not paying attention to. And so the other part of being in kind of that victim place is you get to decide how long you want to be there, right? It's okay to recharge. We all need it. But you get to decide for yourself, when do I pull myself out of this? And if I can't pull myself out of it, I need someone to pull me out. And that's where that support network comes in. I have clients that they have access to emergency coaching sessions all the time, right? And so they'll call me on a whim and just be like, I am not doing anything. I'm feeling super sorry for myself. And, even the most powerful, the bravest people on the planet get in that place. And it's a question of how do you, again, flip the script, right,
Yes.
on that emotion and channel it for good. So reaching out to somebody is hard to say, I need help, especially as women. Like we just want to, I don't want to inconvenience anybody, that whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know that there are people that love you out there that are willing to pull you out of the pit because sometimes we need to be pulled out of there, right? And so I share that for folks so that they know that those bad emotions aren't actually bad. They're just trying to communicate something about you. So for example, if you're feeling frustrated or angry at your boss or something like that, it's usually because you really care about the mission, right? Like you're very
Yeah.
passionate about whatever the issue is. It's just a matter of flipping the script again and
Yeah.
channeling that energy more towards positive, anabolic, joyful places that you want to go to.
Yes, and I love what you said there is you're really reframing what's going
Yes.
on and you're helping people see that the strategy that they're using may not be the strategy that's giving them the result that they want. So then let's explore a new strategy. Because at
Totally.
the end of the day, every action is a strategy. Now, whether that strategy is effective or not, whether it's conscious or subconscious, whether it makes you a leader worth following or not, can all be debated. But the fact that it's a strategy, it's a strategy. And maybe
Yes.
sometimes we just need to learn a new one.
Yes. Oh, you're so eloquent.
Ah,
I love it.
you're
Yes.
awesome.
Thank you.
So I'm curious to learn, and another thing that I loved because very few people talk about this is that time frame that it takes between action happening the way you want it to happen, and sometimes we'll be stuck in a little moment of a rut, and that is okay. If you feel like you need to go watch the movie and eat some ice cream and order pizza all at once, by all means do it. And I know I sure do. But it's like what the amount of time that it's going to take varies for everyone. But that time is in every leader's story worth following. They have rumbled with this in their journey. And they've had those moments of where you're just in that rut and you're just feeling it. And eventually, at some point, through the people that you know, the experiences that you have, you evolve. And it's okay to be in that time.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the other core things that those types of leaders employ is they don't fight the emotion, they
Mm,
just sit with it, right? So rather than suppressing, because it's going to come up no matter what, sit with it, try to learn from what's going on internally, try to figure out, like, okay, what is my soul? What is my spirit trying to teach me about myself and where I need to go? And yeah, as you say, try a different strategy. And it doesn't have to be, this monumental like master plan. It's just one step. Try something
yeah.
different and see where it lands.
Yes. So, what
Right.
does that look like for you today? I know people listening are in a complete amazement to what you have accomplished, what you are accomplishing. How does that imposter syndrome and that doubt and that fear and that process look like for you today?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. Right now, what that looks like is I've been in this phase of trying to unlock my creativity.
Mm.
So, coming from government work, there's not a ton of room for creativity.
No.
And especially coming from that high functioning to do list, right? Like
Mm.
runs your life, trying to open up my mind to these ideas of creative time is not a waste of time. Um, Creating something that maybe doesn't fit what I'm looking for and starting over again is not a waste of time. Um, Sitting doing activities that fill me and my core are not a waste of time. So, for example, reading was one that I gave up for a long time in the military because I didn't have time, right? But understanding that I'm built for connection and the way that I connect with these authors through their biographies or autobiographies or fiction or whatever it might be is one of the places where my soul finds rest, and not apologizing for taking time to read
Yeah.
because it's what I need to recharge, right? And so again, moving away from what the world says productivity looks like to what my heart says productivity looks like for me is what I'm doing today.
I love that. It sounds like you read everything that I've experienced too. I'm like, yes, me too. Me
Yes,
too.
I know, right? Oh, and right now I'm reading Glennon Doyle's Untamed.
I met her.
Oh, you
I
did?
did. I have a
Oh my
picture with her too. She's
gosh.
so awesome. She was at a leader cast event here in Atlanta that I went to. And I kid you not, I have never seen a speaker on a stage where the audience came out and they were all in tears just
Oh,
with how impactful her story was.
yes, yes. And I love
Beautiful.
too, you talk about rawness, her
Yeah.
journey through her books, right? It's like, oh, this book is all about how my marriage was like magically restored. And then, oh, by the way, it imploded, right? And became this whole other thing, right?
Yes.
But the permission that she gives people to honestly share that journey,
Mm,
right? And especially, so for me, one of the other things too that I'm working on right now is like, again, that tapping on the shoulder. It's been like
yeah.
years that the tap has been telling me, write a book. And I'm like, who am I? Right? The imposter syndrome's back. I don't have enough time in the career field. Who's going to listen to me anyway? Right? All those things. But Glennon's story is exactly one of, that is where she was at that time on her journey. And she wrote about it and it encouraged people. And you know what? If I write this book and only one person is encouraged, I've done my job.
Yes.
It's totally worth putting it all out there.
You have to write that book.
I am.
I'm going to hold you accountable for that.
I am. I will. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. And so now as we get close to wrapping up the show, help us understand what chapter 4 is looking like for you moving forward.
Chapter 4 is one where I'm really letting go completely of perceived societal structures. We talked about burning things to the ground. I'm finally in a mental space where it's not just about saying like, oh no, that opportunity isn't for me. It's literally saying like, this whole structure is not serving entire communities and we need to rebuild something from the ashes, right? And so I am still in my hybrid career, which I'm really, really grateful for. I'm still waiting for kind of the prompting to move out of that into more full-time coaching. I think that time is coming really soon.
Yeah.
And yeah, just continuing to take leaps and being courageous and accepting myself and understanding myself and how I was built is where I'm going. And yeah, just connecting with people. And I mean, my mission is really to rid the world of fear, which I know a lot of people say is ridiculous, but I think it's absolutely possible. And I'm not going to stop until we get to that place, because I wasted so much time and energy worrying about imposter syndrome and being found out. And I could have used that energy in so much more constructive ways. And so my hope is that someone listening lets go of that fear and takes that tiny, tiny step and just trust that God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, whatever your belief system is, right, is going to take you so much further than you could have ever imagined. So,
well, you have this reservoir of wisdom and strategy and self-awareness to give to the world through your experiences. And we love to have our guest experts leave our audience with a leadership challenge. Based on our conversation, what kind of challenge would you leave our audience with?
Yes. So I would really encourage those folks listening to actually write down, not just think about, because there's something really powerful about writing things down, but write down their dreams. And one way you can do this, if it's hard for that to come up for you, is if you're laying on your deathbed and you're looking back on your life, what are the things that you're most proudest that you achieved, and write those down. And that's really the beginning of unlocking the true desires of your heart. And some fears are going to come up because our dreams are bigger than we are, and they seem too crazy to be able to achieve. And so the challenge is write it down and take one teeny tiny step in the direction of one of those dreams. Rally your support network if you have to. You can reach out to us. I'm at mightysparrowcoaching.com. Do what you need to do to go 1% further, and it'll be the beginning of a journey. And if you just do 1% every day, then you'll get there.
1% closer. I love that. So I will make sure to include the contact information so that you can stay in contact with Alani and check out her work. To our listeners, the ball is in your court. I challenge you to take action, continue the conversations, and reach out to Alani to partner with her on your leadership journey. You are listening to Flipping the Script, Leadership Beyond the Title. We'll see you on our next episode. If you found even the smallest nugget of wisdom in this episode, share it with a friend and your friend will thank you. Let's continue the conversation with like-minded leaders and join us on Facebook at Go Flip the Script. Until next time, I challenge you to incorporate what you learned today to evolve your leadership impact.